All right, let's make a blood smear and then do a Wright stain. So the first step is to get everything ready, because once you're bleeding, you don't want to be running around getting this stuff. So I've got here 4 slides, and I recommend you get at least 4 slides so that you can make 2 blood smears at the same time. I've got a lancet, you probably only need 1, an alcohol wipe, and a band-aid to cover my finger after I lance myself. And then I have my staining tray here, which is going to contain all of the fluid while I'm making the smear and staining the slide. Okay, so I think I'm ready. I'm going to go ahead and clean off one of my fingers. I already did this a few times today, so what finger do I want to use? I'm going to go with my left pinky. Okay, so I'm just cleaning off the area that I'm going to lance. And you just take this lance and push it down, and it'll click. You can't push it too hard. It has a preset release mechanism. It's spring loaded. So there it goes. And there's some blood. I'm going to get rid of this first drop of blood with my alcohol wipe, and then I'll squeeze out some more. And I want to put this, they say about 2 centimeters from the end of the slide. Okay, so here I have a puddle of blood, and to smear this, to spread it out, I want to take this other slide and draw it back until it contacts the blood, and you'll see it spread out. Oh crap. And then I can take and push that forward and smear it out that way. And that really was not very good, but I'll make another one. And I'll set this in my staining tray. And got a lot of blood, so I'm ready to make another one. Okay. Okay, I'm going to see if I can hold this one steadier. And draw back until it wicks out across that slide, and then push it forward. And the more you can do that like in a continuous motion, the better it's going to come out. So this one was pretty okay, especially in the middle. I think it's going to work. And that's why I want you to do 2 at once, because you can see this one is pretty terrible. And then this one came out pretty good, pretty evenly spread out in the center. Okay, so now I'm going to set that in my tray. I've got all my slides in the tray, so I'm not getting blood everywhere. I'll clean off my little finger, put on a band-aid, and then let that stuff air dry. And for the rest of the steps, I'll be able to wear gloves. Okay, and as you go around today generating this bloody trash, I want you to throw all this stuff into these circular glass containers that I've put out in your rows that have this disinfecting cleaner. So anything that you get blood on, you can just throw in there. And I have let my slide with my blood on it air dry, and by this point you should have 2 slides with dried blood on it. I'm just going to go ahead and do 1 right now for demonstration purposes. For this next step, you want to get your things ready. I have here a pipette with my Wright stain, a pipette with my buffer solution, and then I have here a cup with distilled water. I really don't need this much. Probably I could have filled it just to the bottom line down here. So, and for the Wright stain and for the buffer, you only need a pipette. Actually, you only need a few drops. So anyway, let me get started. The first step is going to be to cover this slide with the Wright stain. So I got my pipette with the Wright stain solution, and I'm just going to drop that on here. I'm trying not to overflow it so that it's not all running off the sides, but at the same time, I want to cover my whole sample. Because this is what's actually going to stain the white blood cells. Okay, that's pretty good. So now this is going to sit here for 3 or 4 minutes, and I just split the difference and let it sit for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm going to let it sit, and I'll come back for the next step. Okay, so now my slide has sat in that Wright stain for 3 minutes, 30 seconds, and I'm going to add now some buffer solution to the slide. And the idea here is that these things will mix together. So I'm just adding enough. I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera, but I can sort of see the two fluids mixing. I'm just adding enough to mix them in. And then you can kind of rock this back and forth. There, I think you can see it in the camera, the two fluids mixing. And I'm rocking it back and forth and trying my best to not run the fluid off of the slide, because it's still staining right now. And this is going to sit somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. I don't know what time is best. If you have 2 slides, you know, you could do one for 5 minutes and then the other one for 8 minutes or something like that. You know, pick a time interval. I did mine for 7 minutes earlier, and that seemed to work fine. So I'm going to let this sit again for a few minutes, and I'll mix it like this periodically to keep everything mixed together, and then we'll come back for the next step. So I left my side sitting here in the mixture of buffer solution and Wright stain. Now I'm going to rinse everything off with distilled water. And for this process, you want to rinse for 2 to 3 minutes. And so to rinse it off, I'm just going to pick up one side and just drip water across the surface like this, and repeat this process for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so I'll stop the video there and I'll come back when that's done. At this point, your slide should be stained. Now we just need to wait for it to dry, and then we can look at it under the microscope. You could put it in the microscope even before it dries. Just make sure you don't use the 40x or the 100x lens, because it will touch down into that fluid. I'm also going to just wipe off the back so that the back is not wet. And if this is your slide and this is your blood, then make sure you're wearing gloves, number one, and number two, you should be the one handling it and loading it into the microscope. Once this is dry, I'm going to put it in the microscope, and then we can take a look at it. You should be able to see the red blood cells quite easily, even at 4x objective. They may not look clear, but you'll see them there in the background. In order to see the details of the red blood cells and the white blood cells, you probably need to get up to 40x with the objective lens. And you might want to even use 100x, but before you do that, let me know, because you'll need to get a drop of oil to drop that 100x lens into. So let's take a look. So here I am at the 10x objective lens, which is the smallest lens on my microscope. But you would start out at your 4x and get everything in focus there. I'm going to jump up to my next lens. Okay, it's becoming clearer, and then I'll go all the way up to 40 now. And basically it looks like this has worked. You can see right here, let me put it in the center. There's a white blood cell. You can see the details there in the nucleus. And you could use that information to identify what type of white blood cell that is. And here's another one. My red blood cells look a little grunchy, but that's okay. Common mistake would be if you haven't spread out your blood enough. And let me see if I can find a spot, probably near the beginning of mine. The idea with this blood smear is that you're spreading out the cells so that they're evenly separated from each other, because if they are not separated and they're all clumped on top of each other, it's going to be really hard to see what's happening. And this, where I'm at now, is not great, but even here you can see my white blood cells stand out among those red blood cells. So overall, this has worked pretty good. But like I said, you may have, if you didn't spread it out well enough, like here, it's really clumpy, you're not going to be able to see any of the details. Or if you spread it out really unevenly, you're going to have blank spaces. And I'm not finding any on mine because, here's a, like here, this is near the end, it's mostly empty space. So this is not a good area to be looking at. What you want is evenly spread cells. Like this area is good in here. Okay, I hope that's helpful. And actually you can already see the red blood cells. Like if you just, what's that? If you just prick yourself and put the blood on a slide, you can see the red blood cells very easily. What this stain allows you to see, though, are these white blood cells, and it allows you to see the details of the nucleus in these white blood cells so that you could identify them, and you could do differential cell counts and see, for example, is there a high level of neutrophils, which may indicate a bacterial infection, or eosinophils, which may indicate allergies or a parasitic infection, and other things like that. Okay, that's all.